Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe on Texas Football. This episode of State of the Program brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the LowyLawFirm.com. Before we even get going, we had a trivia contest this morning on coffee and football, and we have a winner. Shoni Jackson wins 3 tickets to tonight's Arkansas-Texas basketball. Congratulations to Shoni and the family there. Hope you guys enjoy the Texas game against Arkansas tonight. All right, CJ and Jeff, news and notes right now that we want to talk about. We've got staff retention that we think is important. We've got the spring game and whether or not Texas is going to have one. We got a recent commitment that happened this morning in Max Wright, big offensive lineman out of Melissa, Texas. Then we have off-season workouts ongoing, as well as basketball, both men and women's, with baseball a week and a half away from starting. Let's start with staff retention, though, because of all the things going on right now, maybe the most impactful that has happened in the last week, and this is what we do in the State of the Program, really trying to encapsulate that 30,000-foot view of the program. Staff retention, Tashard Choice deciding to stay with Texas, Steve Sarkisian getting him to stay, as well as a couple of other off-field additions and on-field additions for the Longhorns. Steve Sarkisian keeps building this up. CJ, what do you think about the ability for Sark to keep Tashard Choice?
Yeah, it's massive. You get these kids to commit and buy into the program out of high school. And, by year 3, year 4, to have most of the same coaches that they bought into originally, it keeps the buy-in high in the locker room and on the field. And I think it's very important, especially when you start looking ahead, right? Texas was able to benefit a little bit from Alabama having to go through a coordinator change on both sides of the football. We obviously talked at length all of last season when Jim Harbaugh took the Chargers job and took half of his staff with them. Michigan wasn't the same team that they were whenever they won the national championship the year before. Ryan Day is staying at Ohio State, but they're going to have to replace Jim Knowles, one of the top defensive minds. He's being paid as the top defensive mind in all of college football, and Chip Kelly, who's off to the NFL as well. Not to mention Texas getting to benefit with, Kyle Flood, Pete Kwiatkowski, Torrey Becton on the backside as well, all staying in Austin for the 5th consecutive year. It's very important for me in terms of the year 1 to year 2 developments, the year 2 to year 3, and also get these guys who just arrived on campus, and there's a lot of them, to get up to speed running with the guys who all recruited them out of high school. That's very important to me, and I think Texas is in a very beneficial spot when you compare them to maybe some of the other top 5, top 10 teams that we all project to be in that conversation going into 2025.
Hey, Jeff, he's right. All 3 coordinators for Texas, whether it be Pete Kwiatkowski on defense, Kyle Flood on offense, obviously Sark is the offensive coordinator at one level, and then Jeff Banks at special teams. Texas had a marvelous amount of continuity, 5 straight years of coordinators the same on the same side, on every side of the ball, and then you're going into Ohio State. It's got to replace everybody. Are you buying a little bit of what CJ's selling there about maybe that giving Texas a leg up in Columbus on August 30th?
100%. Because CJ just laid it out. The last 2 years, you look at Nick Saban having to bring in Tommy Reese before that 2023 game in Tuscaloosa, and then all the changes Michigan had last year. And let's not forget, Bobby, if you give Sark a full offseason to prepare for an opponent, you'll see a much better plan Texas has. And I know Ohio State personnel-wise is going to be different defensively and in addition to schematically. You'll see Sark have a much better plan in Columbus than he did in the Cotton Bowl in the college football playoff. The more you think about it, as long as that season is, there aren't a ton of secrets left by the time you get to a national semifinal. So Jim Knowles and Sark both, they didn't have a ton to hide. So Sark can come in with new wrinkles. Again, you're going to build this offense around Arch Manning in the offseason. So I like it. And then for PK, I think with the addition of Le'Allen Clark coaching the edge guys, I think that's going to give him a chance to take a step back and take a more big picture look at the defense. It's going to allow him, Bobby, it might not sound like a big deal, but if you're the coordinator and during individual periods in practice, hey, I want to go be with the defensive tackles today, or I need to be with the safeties today, whatever it is, just give PK more flexibility to move about the defense where he's not just having to coach the edge guys. I think that's going to make a huge difference. And all this stuff we talk about recruiting being the lifeblood of your program. With the staff continuity, I think, especially retaining Tashard Choice, it allows you to not only retain, but further dig in your foothold in the state of Georgia and in the state of Florida, where there are plenty of prospects. Kirby Smart can't sign them all in the Peach State. And as good as Florida State and Miami and Florida are at retaining stuff in their backyard, they can't sign them all either. And as Texas continues to have a presence, the further Texas gets into being a member of the SEC, when that new car smell wears off, as Texas continues to win games and have a presence, that's going to pay huge dividends in recruiting. So whether you're talking about the culture, game prep, recruiting, staff retention is it's going to be, I think, the main thing we're talking about this offseason that's going to help Texas. If they're going to get back to a national semifinal, have a chance to win a national championship, it all starts with staff retention.
I got to be – staff retention in recruiting is imperative. It's not imperative, but almost a luxury at some level when you're dealing with a guy like Tashard Choice, who has options like the Dallas Cowboys and a couple other NFL teams, right? And I would say this, Choice has done a tremendous job of evaluating and getting young guys interested in the University of Texas. Right now, they have scholarship offers out to the 5 best running backs in the country, and I think 2 or 3 of them at least are going to visit. Isaiah Crowell out of Alabama has already set up a visit in the month of June. So that is another piece of what continuity means. You're not seeing a revolving door of assistant coaches, and that plays into it as well. Speaking of recruiting, let's go to the next topic. Texas gets its 3rd commitment of the recruiting campaign. This from Max Wright, offensive lineman out of Melissa, Texas, 6'7", 275, 278, something like that at junior day. Jeff and CJ, you guys were both there and saw him. Jeff, I talked to you a little bit on Coffee and Football about Max Wright this morning. CJ, what did you see out of Max Wright over at junior day, and what do you see about him that you like, and what he means to the Longhorns?
Yeah, big, lengthy football prospect with room to grow and room to develop physically is really where I stand right now. 6'6 and a half, 6'7", 286 is what he weighed in at on the junior day. It reminds me, and I know that the Melissa ties are there, but it reminds me a lot of what Trevor Goosby looked like coming out of high school, right? That first year on campus is really where you saw him blossom into a guy that was north of 300 pounds, got into that 310 range, and then eventually grew into about 315, 317 is where he was playing at towards the end of last year. Is that the trajectory and path that I think is viable for a Max Wright? Yeah. Is he able to utilize the feet the same way that a Trevor Goosby was? I think that remains to be seen, because Goosby has shown that he can hang with just about anybody in the country off the edge and do so at a very young age. But I love the take as a guy who you can't teach that height, that wingspan, and that ability to move with that athleticism. So I'm excited for it. It's another one of those quote unquote projects, if you will, for Kyle Flood, who we've seen develop over years. Cam Williams being another one where once you get the body right, you have yourself a pretty solid prospect on the outside. Max Wright falls in that same category for me. It's just about getting the body right and transitioning from a junior in high school through his senior year and then eventually getting on the campus next December.
Texas does not take many early commitments, but they have traditionally taken early commitments on the offensive line. Jeff, we think they're going to go upwards of 6 offensive linemen if they get the right 6. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think for a couple reasons. I think one, it's a really deep year. It's a good year in state. You've got some good leads out of state. So why are you going to leave a quality prospect off the board that could otherwise want to play for you, number one? And number two, you're probably going to need those bodies because you're going to have some attrition. And one thing I like, Bobby, I can see this program has really turned a corner is we had about, 15 years or so where Texas was just forced to play true freshman offensive linemen, play guys before they're ready. And because they just had no other options. And that's been the beauty with a guy like a Trevor Goosby and a guy like Brandon Baker had the redshirt. There were some years where, you talk about, hey, can you find 8 or 9 quality pieces? Bobby, we've seen some years in that lost decade where you find 5 guys that aren't going to get your quarterback killed. It was a struggle just to put 5 competent guys on the field. So it's been a nice change of pace where now you can actually develop guys. You can call yourself a developmental program when you can actually bring guys along at a nice pace and not just throw them to the wolves. Maybe the best example of that, Connor Williams and Patrick Vahe ended up being solid players at Texas, but at your first assignment as a true freshman, like, hey, go out there against the top 10 Notre Dame team on the road because we ain't got nobody else. So best of luck to you. You're going to sink or swim. Those days are done at Texas. So you're going to have some attrition because some guys will see the writing on the wall based on where they are in the two deep towards the end of spring. But now you'll bring in 5 or 6 new bodies. So hopefully Kyle Flood can keep this good cycle going. You broke that vicious cycle. My hope is to keep it going. And in a 6-man class, Bobby, if it is 6, Max Wright's a good, solid piece to start with because tackle bodies and guys with the ability to legitimately play tackle at the next level. And it just seems like those guys are getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah, Bobby, if I can add something there, if Texas was taking Max Wright as their first offensive lineman in this class and even view it as one of those longer developing projects, considering some of the other in-state guys in the crop, that shows you and shows me that they really like him long-term with the tools that he has for him to be the first guy to solidify a spot. Kyle Flood said, get in the boat because we want you. So the green light given in early February is a great sign there.
Yep. All right. We're going to talk more about the spring game next. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. He's the one who made the tickets for Shawnee Jackson possible, and that's Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. He's been helping injured Texans for 20-plus years. All you have to do is give him and his group a call at loweylawfirm.com, and they will give you a free, no-strings-attached consultation whether or not you might be due compensation based on an injury from a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind. Again, that's Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Adam, thank you for offering those free tickets to Texas fans tonight for the game against Arkansas. All right, spring game. We've been talking about this for a better part of a week on Coffee and Football and other places, myself and Jerry Hamilton. Texas apparently contemplating not having a spring game. Reasons cited, 16 games in a college football season. Transfer portal, people wanting to look at your players before they get into the transfer portal, and Sark just trying to change things up and make things better. What do you think the driving force for no spring game really is? Is it the 16-game season? Is it portal, or is it just all of the above? What are y'all's thoughts on that, Jeff?
I think what it boils down to is this, Bobby. I think it's a little bit of all of those things legitimately, but in a day and age where college football coaches, we know this. This is not a knock on Steve Sarkisian. I can say this across the board. College football coaches are control freaks. They want to control as much as possible. And in the day and age where they're losing control on more and more, if I'm Sark, one thing I can control is, hey, we might have to have a TV product because the SEC tells us I can do it however I want. If I want to have a traditional spring game, we can. But if you want to come out and slug through a 2-hour practice and we just have a normal practice, we can do that too. I think there is something to be said for it. Texas is in a different position than some other programs, but there is something to be said for protecting some of the young guys, some of the developmental guys that are on your roster that, hey, they might be a year away for you, but for somebody else, they could come be a walk-in starter. Where I think the spring game could be helpful, Bobby, and I think you have to have something for 2 reasons. I think, one, you got to give the fans something.
Yes.
Everybody's starved for football in the spring. You got to give them something. And 2, if I'm a guy that we just talked about with the offensive line, if I see the writing on the wall that I'm not going to play and I'm going to have to transfer if I want to play and I'm about to go into the portal, I want some film, some TV film, something that I can take with me that if another school says, hey, we need some practice cut-ups or something, I want as much quality film as possible. And it might be practice film because you don't have it from game reps. So the more opportunity you can give the guys that they might not be in your program for the long haul, but they're going to go somewhere else, the ability to help those guys as much as possible. I like that aspect of it, but it's an unfortunate deal because coaches have more reasons now to not expose their roster than they do to expose it and have a traditional spring game. I don't like it, but it's just kind of the way it is right now.
My thought on this, guys, is if there were no transfer portal, I don't think Sark would not have a spring game. He could still have it, but it could be scaled back, right?
Yeah.
The idea of not having a spring game altogether, I think, is because of the tampering. And that's what Matt Rule says up at Nebraska. I mean, He's not talking about number of games played, even though he played 13 this year. Now, 16 is more than 13. I get it. But you've got a lot of young players, too. I mean, you got 20 plus new faces to this roster that didn't play 16 games last year. So I think it's down to tampering, although the other stuff makes sense. And I will say this, Sark with his NFL background, CJ, and the idea of OTAs and that sort of thing, it makes a little sense with maybe how he wants to develop players. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see that being the angle. Of course, you'd like to get out of the spring as healthy as possible. I think that's
right.
the big key in terms of all of these 15 practices is, we're not going to the ground unless we absolutely have to. And even then, there's a quick whistle in most of these instances. Injuries in spring game, injuries in fall camp. I mean, that's where you start to put yourself in a position to say, okay, I don't know if what I'm doing here is working. But to the point of tampering, look, if you're at the University of Texas, you're a good football player, right? And if you're not playing here, well, there's odds are someone behind the corner, whether it be from spring film, whether it be from scout team tape, whatever it is, odds are people are going to want you, right? I look back to who Texas lost out of the portal this year. They lost 10 players. Not a single one of them had a career start, and they all ended up at Mississippi State, Arizona, Kansas, LSU, BYU, Vanderbilt. They're all Big 12 and SEC programs, right? There's going to be a home for them regardless if they have spring tape or not. So I kind of see the argument. I kind of don't because, look, good players are going to find a home regardless. And I don't think, a 5-minute clip of spring tape is going to be what ends up getting them to other scholarships because, look, odds are they probably had 20 or 25 scholarships or destinations waiting and hoping for them out of high school to begin with. So we'll see again. But right now I do kind of view the conversation of no spring game stemming more so from, look, you just played 16 games, right? Can you keep your body in shape for another 16 the year after with 15 practices in between and then summer conditioning starting up a month after? I think that's more of where I'm leaning. If that were to be taken away, again, that's just a tough thing to do. I made the trip down to Mobile where they're expected to be 5 Longhorns participating. Only one went in because they needed some rest. They have all their tape. And of course, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, they all followed suit as well. At some point, yes, football is great. You want to put the product on the field for all the fans, get the hype, get the buzz around the program. But you got to make sure that these guys are rested, prepared, recovered from what they just went through with their body to begin with, which was a total gauntlet.
When I think about tampering, just to take your point, though, CJ, is you get a guy that may be tampered with a little bit, but he has a standout spring game, and all of a sudden he's being tampered with a lot.
Sure.
Malik Murphy had a great spring game, right? And so when his time came, people didn't need that much tape on him when it came to the – and so I see what you're saying. I do believe that 16 games is a lot. I mean, look, that's a heavy load for college players, undoubtedly. So we'll see what that all means. All right, a couple other comments and notes that we need to get to. The players right now are undergoing off-season workouts. That means, I think, Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings. I can't remember exactly, but 3 mornings a week they're out, and then they do weights in the afternoon on others. They've got a lot of stuff going on. The coaches, by the way, are going to start going on vacation, I believe, next week into this weekend. So they'll get a week off. Much needed break for these assistant coaches that have been on the road or recruiting or coaching really nonstop since the last week of July. I mean, They have not had a true week off, including Christmas, since July. This will be their first time to have off. So congratulations to them. Also want to mention the Super Bowl. Longhorns have at least 3 Longhorn grads there. Charles Omenahu, Xavier Worthy, and Mora Ojomo participating. Keontae Ingram also on the Chiefs, but he actually ended up at USC for his final year. Good luck to them this weekend. Basketball tonight for the Longhorns. This is a key one for them. The women's team plays tomorrow night before getting South Carolina at home on Sunday. Big week ahead for Texas as they go down the home stretch in SEC play on the men's side starting tonight. Any final thoughts on that before we let folks go here on State of the Program? Jeff, I'll start with you.
Hey, Anytime, give me one of those old Southwest Conference teams, especially now that you're in the same league with Arkansas again. Give me all the. I don't care if it's tiddlywinks. Give me all the Texas Arkansas matchups I can handle.
All right, CJ, what do you think?
I think this team is kind of coming into their own. Look, it's been a rocky season. There's no hiding that. But look, you're 15-7. This game right now provides you an opportunity to go 4-5, or win 4 out of their last 5 games with 2 ranked wins, a win over LSU, a dismantling of LSU on the road as well. This would help, kind of stock that resume and get those quad 1 wins ready for the end of the season. I like Texas's chances, and they've kind of pieced things together offensively. Let's see if they sustain that for another 40 minutes against Arkansas.
All right, guys, I tell you what, Longhorns, busy week ahead. Max Wright, spring game talk, basketball, off-season workouts, all of that on the table this week. Good luck tonight to the men again against Arkansas. I think that's going to be a big game for them. For CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe, as well as our sponsor, Adam Lowy, this has been Stay the Program. Hope you guys have a good one. And congrats again to young Max Wright out of Melissa. Hook 'em, guys.